It was one of those golden Fridays that felt like a promise, the kind that makes you believe good things are still possible. I moved around the house humming that old tune Jason used to love, arranging the roses I'd bought that morning. Their scent filled every corner, mixing with the faint aroma of vanilla candles. On the counter, a small velvet box waited next to my purse. Nothing fancy, just a token of love. I'd spent the whole week planning this dinner, imagining his smile when he saw what I'd done. Maybe tonight would remind us, of what we used to be. I called Trattoria Lucia, my heart racing as the hostess picked up. "Yes, a table for 2 at 8, near the window, please. It's our anniversary weekend." Her voice was warm, kind. "Of course, Mrs. Adams. We'll make it special." I smiled to myself, almost teary with relief. It sounded like fate agreeing with me. Before hanging up, I scribbled a little note I planned to place by his plate. "To my favorite person. Always." Just writing it made me ache with nostalgia for simpler days, when love didn't feel like effort. When Jason came home, everything in me brightened, at least for a second. His jacket was wrinkled, his tie loosened, his smile distracted. Still, I greeted him with all the warmth I had left. "Don't make any plans tonight," I said playfully. "I have a surprise for you." He hesitated, glancing away. "Oh, I might need to stay late. We're finalizing a contract." My heart sank, but I didn't show it. I just laughed softly and teased. "No excuses. Just meet me at Trattoria Lucia at 8, okay?" After a pause, he nodded. "All right. Fine. I'll make it." He kissed my cheek, quick, distant, and walked out. And as the door closed, I whispered to myself, maybe this dinner will bring him back. The hours before dinner felt endless. I kept glancing at the clock, checking my phone, rearranging the same vase 3 times. Every time I caught my reflection, I told myself, "Relax, Emma. It's just dinner." But deep down, I knew it wasn't just anything. It was a test, one I needed us to pass. I slipped into the navy dress he'd once called his favorite, the one that made his eyes linger a little longer. As I fastened my earrings, I caught a faint tremor in my hands. Hope and fear, they always come together, don't they? By the time I got to Trattoria Lucia, the city lights had started to blur like watercolor. Inside, everything felt soft and familiar. The hum of quiet conversations, the clink of glasses, the faint notes of a piano drifting through the air. The hostess greeted me with a smile. "Good evening, Mrs. Adams. Your table's ready." She led me to a cozy corner near the window, just as I'd requested. The view was beautiful. Candles flickering against the glass, rain threatening to start outside. I imagined Jason walking through the door any minute now, eyes lighting up at the sight of me. I placed the note by his plate and took a deep breath. For a moment, I let myself believe that tonight would fix us. That the distance, the excuses, the late nights, all of it, would melt away under candlelight. The waiter poured me a glass of wine, and I smiled, whispering a silent toast to new beginnings. But as I lifted the glass to my lips, a small voice inside me murmured, "What if he doesn't come?" 8 o'clock came and went. I checked my phone. No messages. The waiter passed by with a polite smile, asking if I'd like to order. "Not yet," I said, forcing a grin. "He'll be here soon." I traced the rim of my wine glass, pretending to look relaxed while my chest tightened with every passing minute. I told myself he was just running late. Traffic, maybe. A last-minute call. Anything but indifference. I wanted to believe in his promise, the way I always had. At 8:15, I texted him a quick, "Can't wait to see you." The bubbles appeared, then disappeared. No reply. The restaurant grew warmer, louder, couples laughing, forks clinking, candles flickering like tiny heartbeats. I felt strangely out of place in my own fantasy. The waitress came back, eyes kind. Would you like another glass while you wait? I nodded. Sure, why not? My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Inside, I was holding on to an image, the two of us smiling again, like we used to. By 8:30, the seat across from me still sat empty, the note untouched beside his plate. I stared at the little words, to my favorite person, always, and wondered when always had started to feel so fragile. Something inside me shifted that night, quietly, like the first crack in glass before it shatters. And though I didn't know it yet, that empty chair would soon tell me everything I'd been too afraid to see. I arrived early, or maybe just eager. Either way, I was the first to step through the doors of Trattoria Lucia that night. The air smelled of garlic and promise, the kind of scent that wraps around you and whispers, "Something good is coming." I handed my coat to the hostess, smiling as if my heart wasn't beating faster than it should. "Mrs. Adams," she said warmly, "your table is ready." Her voice carried that familiar kindness, and for a fleeting moment, I felt seen, like I still belonged somewhere. The soft hum of piano filled the restaurant, and candlelight danced on the wine glasses. I followed the hostess toward the quiet corner by the window, my heels clicking lightly against the marble floor. But halfway there, I froze. My gaze caught on a man's profile, his laugh, his gestures, the way his hand moved as he spoke. Jason. My Jason, sitting just a few feet away, and opposite him, Melissa, his ex, her voice, her laugh, it all hit me like a cold slap. 2 glasses of wine, a candle flickering between them, his hand resting on hers. For a second, the room tilted. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The laughter around me blurred into white noise. My first thought was denial. No, this can't be real. But it was. My husband was sitting in the same restaurant I'd chosen for us, only he wasn't waiting for me. He was already there, with her. My stomach twisted. My hand trembled around the strap of my purse. And yet somehow, I straightened my back, fixed my hair, and smiled at the hostess. "Actually," I said, forcing calm, "could you bring me to that table instead?" The hostess hesitated, her polite smile flickering when she noticed my expression. I could almost see the questions forming behind her eyes, but she said nothing, just nodded and led the way. My heels echoed louder than I expected, each step sounding like a countdown. Jason turned mid-laugh, and the look on his face when he saw me, that instant of pure, frozen horror, was almost cinematic. Melissa's smile faltered too, her fingers slipping from his hand. It was like walking into a play where I'd never been given the script. "Hi, darling," I said, my voice steady, even kind. "I see you started without me." Every head nearby turned, the restaurant's gentle murmur falling into silence. Jason's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "Emma, what are you doing here?" he stammered. I tilted my head, savoring his confusion. "Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing." My pulse was thundering, but I refused to let him see it. If pain was going to have a stage tonight, I'd make sure I was the one holding the spotlight. Melissa shifted awkwardly, reaching for her purse. "I didn't know she'd be here." I gave her the smallest smile, sharp as glass. "Oh, don't worry, Melissa. Neither did I." Jason looked between us, searching for a lifeline that didn't exist. I could see the panic in his eyes, the way guilt clung to his every breath. And for the first time, I realized something. I wasn't just hurt. I was awake. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Jason's lips parted, but words failed him. I stood there, taking in the scene, the flickering candlelight, their half-empty glasses, the shadow of a shared secret that had been laughing right in front of me. He looked smaller somehow, like the man I'd once loved had evaporated, leaving only the coward behind. "So," I said finally, my tone light but deliberate, This is what staying late looks like." The woman at the next table coughed awkwardly. Jason rubbed his temples, desperate to pull a version of the truth from thin air. "Emma, it's not what it looks like," he said, voice cracking. I leaned forward, eyes narrowing just enough to make him flinch. "Then please," I replied softly, "enlighten me. Because from here, it looks like you're having a romantic dinner with your ex while your wife waits at home. Or worse, the next table over." Melissa sank in her chair, whispering, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean—" I cut her off, smiling with quiet venom. "You didn't mean to get caught. There's a difference." The silence that followed was almost theatrical. I turned to the waiter, who stood frozen nearby, unsure if he should intervene or disappear. "A bottle of your finest wine, please," I said, handing him the menu with a calmness that didn't belong to the moment. "I think we're all going to need it." My hand didn't shake. My voice didn't waver. And as I sat down across from Jason, staring straight through him, I realized something terrifying and liberating. The worst had already happened. Everything after this would be on my terms. The waiter poured the wine with trembling hands, the liquid gliding into the glasses like a ritual neither of us wanted to be part of. I watched the crimson swirl and thought how love once felt just like that, rich, intoxicating, and easy to spill. Jason sat across from me, shoulders stiff, eyes darting between me and Melissa, searching for some version of the man he thought he could still be. "Emma, please," he started, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's not what it looks like." That line again. The oldest one in the book. I took a slow sip, letting the silence punish him. "Then tell me," I said, resting my elbow on the table. "What does it look like? Because from here it looks like betrayal served with Chianti and candlelight." He shifted, trying to regain control, but the effort only made him smaller. Melissa just wanted to talk. "It's complicated," he muttered. I smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly, just tired. "No, Jason. It's actually very simple. You lied." My voice cracked on that last word, but I didn't let the tear that followed fall. I'd already given him too much. Melissa stared at her napkin, her face pale. "Emma, I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean for this to happen." I laughed once, soft, broken, disbelieving. "You didn't mean to get caught, Melissa. Let's not romanticize it." The room was spinning now, though I sat perfectly still. Every sound, the clinking forks, the whispering guests, the scrape of a chair, felt amplified, unbearable. And somewhere between anger and disbelief, I realized the truth. I wasn't losing Jason tonight. I'd already lost him long ago. I stared at Jason, and for a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. The man sitting in front of me wasn't the one who used to pull me close after long days or whisper plans for our future under this very same candlelight. He was a stranger wearing my husband's face. "Do you remember our first dinner here?" I asked quietly. "You said this was your favorite place in the world. I guess that part was true. You just forgot to mention who you wanted to share it with." My tone was calm, but inside I was shaking, every word slicing through the last threads of denial holding me together. Jason tried to reach across the table, his hand hovering like he could somehow touch the version of me that still cared. "Emma, please, listen." I pulled back before his fingers grazed mine. "No," I said, steady now. "You've said enough." He exhaled, shoulders collapsing as if the truth had finally caught up with him. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to cry until the whole restaurant blurred. But I didn't. Instead, I reached for my glass, held it up to the light, and studied the red reflection trembling inside. That was me now. Cracked, shaken, but still whole. Melissa looked like she wanted to vanish. Her lipstick had faded, her posture small, her eyes darting anywhere but mine. She mumbled, "I didn't mean to hurt you." I tilted my head. "Of course you did," I said softly. "You just didn't expect to see what that looks like." And for the first time since walking in, I felt something close to power. Fragile, fleeting, but real. Painful honesty has a strange way of clearing the air. It burns, but it also frees you. I looked down at my plate, untouched, perfect, meaningless. The food sat there like an exhibit from a life I no longer recognized. My hand moved on its own, steady now, as I lifted my glass. The wine shimmered under the light, dark and beautiful, just like the truth, bitter but cleansing. "Here's to honesty," I said, raising it slightly toward Jason, "a taste you clearly forgot." And before he could respond, I tipped it forward, letting the red spill across his plate, staining everything in front of him. The sound was soft, but it cut sharper than any word I could have said. Gasps echoed around the room, whispers blooming like wildfire, but I didn't care. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. Jason reached out, panic flashing in his eyes. "Emma, please." I stood folding my napkin neatly beside the note I'd written hours earlier, to my favorite person. Always. The irony wasn't lost on me. "You were," I said quietly. "Once." And then I turned toward the door, my heels clicking with the same rhythm that had brought me here. Only now, it sounded like closure. Outside, the night air hit me, cold, sharp, liberating. My heart was still pounding, but the ache felt cleaner somehow, almost necessary. Behind me, the restaurant lights blurred through the glass, and I caught my reflection, not the woman who'd come to save her marriage, but the one who'd finally stopped begging to be chosen. I walked to my car without looking back, clutching my purse like a promise. Whatever tomorrow held, it would no longer belong to him. When I got home that night, the house felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that hums in your bones. I left the lights off, let the darkness swallow me whole. My heels lay by the door, my hair tangled from the wind, my heart still racing from the storm I'd just walked through. I sat on the couch, staring at nothing, listening to the clock tick like it was mocking me. Every second stretched, each one saying what Jason wouldn't. He made his choice. I could almost still smell the wine. Rich, bitter, final. When the door finally opened hours later, his footsteps broke that silence. Jason stood there breathless, desperate, eyes wide like he'd run home to rescue the version of us that no longer existed. "Emma, please," he said, his voice cracking. "You have to listen." It wasn't serious. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. "You cheated on me with the same woman you used to cry over," I said quietly. "That's not serious, Jason. That's recycled heartbreak." My tone surprised me. Calm, measured, like I was narrating someone else's story. He stepped closer, pleading. "We just talked." "Over dinner. With candles. With your hand on hers," I interrupted. "Save it." My voice didn't rise. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there, steady and unshakable, while he fumbled for excuses that meant nothing now. I slipped off my wedding ring, simple gold, once sacred, and placed it on the coffee table between us. "You see, Jason," I whispered, "I had something special planned tonight. A surprise dinner, a note, a chance to reconnect. But you gave me something better." Jason looked at me like a man drowning, begging the tide to turn back. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice trembling somewhere between guilt and confusion. I met his eyes, really met them, and felt nothing but exhaustion. "Clarity," I said simply. "You gave me clarity." I'd spent months trying to read between his silences, rewriting his coldness into something tender, pretending that distance was just fatigue. But seeing him with her stripped away every illusion, it was like suddenly remembering who I was before him and realizing I missed her. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing like a caged animal. "Emma, I made a mistake, okay? Can't we just—" "No," I cut him off. "You don't get to call it a mistake when you made a reservation." My voice echoed softly in the dim room, steady, deliberate. For once, he had nothing to say. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was truth taking up space. I could feel my heartbeat slowing, matching the rhythm of resolve settling into my chest. I'd cried enough in my life over promises people never kept. Tonight, the tears stayed put. I walked past him toward the bedroom, the weight of years trailing behind me. Every photograph on the wall felt like a relic, versions of us frozen in moments that no longer belonged to me. In the mirror, I caught my reflection again, the same one from the restaurant window, older, stronger, still standing. I picked up a suitcase from under the bed and set it on the floor. The sound of the zipper was final. Behind me, Jason whispered, "Emma, please, don't do this." I didn't turn around. "Jason," I said softly, "you already did." I spent the rest of the night packing. Not in anger, not even in grief, just in silence. The sound of clothes folding became a kind of rhythm, a heartbeat that reminded me I was still here, still choosing. Every item that went into the suitcase felt like a truth I'd been avoiding. The sweater he said he loved, the perfume he stopped noticing, the framed photo that used to make me smile. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but there was nothing left to drain. What remained was sharper, a kind of clarity that burned but didn't destroy. From the doorway, Jason watched me, helpless. "You're overreacting," he whispered, and I almost pitied how small his words sounded. I zipped the suitcase and faced him one last time. "No, Jason," I said, my tone calm enough to scare us both. "I'm just finally reacting." He reached for me, but I stepped back. I could see it in his eyes, the realization that I was done begging, done waiting, done pretending. I walked past him, carrying nothing but my dignity and a strange, steady calm that I hadn't felt in years. I paused at the front door, hand on the knob. Behind me, the house was still, the life we built hanging like a ghost between us. "You should get some sleep," I said quietly. "Tomorrow's going to be different." And as I stepped into the night, the wind brushed against my face, cool and electric, like the world itself had shifted. Somewhere deep inside, a thought flickered. Faint, but certain. He has no idea what I'm capable of. The next morning, the sunlight felt different. Colder, clearer, almost surgical. I didn't cry when I woke up. Instead, I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. The ache had been replaced by something steadier. Focus. People always say revenge is about anger, but they're wrong. It's about balance. It's about showing the universe that cause and effect still exist. I wasn't going to scream or break anything. I was going to let the truth do the heavy lifting. Quietly, efficiently, completely. By noon, I'd already called a lawyer, not one of those friend of a friend types Jason liked to boast about, but someone discreet, sharp, and lethal with paperwork. While he stammered through conference calls pretending to fix what he'd broken, I was gathering proof. Receipts, messages, photos. Every lie he told had a timestamp, and I collected them like trophies. I even found out that business trip next month, the one he said was for networking, was actually a vacation booked under Melissa's name. 2 tickets, 1 bed, 1 foolproof plan that wasn't his anymore. I didn't rage. I documented, I forwarded, I printed. When I was done, I emailed everything to HR at his firm, his messages, his itinerary, his little love notes. Subject line, Employee Conduct Inquiry, Jason Adams. I attached proof, hit send, and took another sip of coffee. For the first time in weeks, I felt peace. Real peace. The kind that doesn't come from forgiveness, but from finally taking your hands off the wound and letting it scar. It didn't take long for the storm to arrive. By Monday afternoon, Jason's name was whispered through every hallway of his company. I didn't need confirmation. I could feel it. The air around me hummed with invisible justice. Around 6 that evening, he burst through the door, red-faced, eyes wild, the mask finally gone. "You told my company?" he shouted. "You ruined me." I didn't flinch. I just stirred my tea and looked at him the way one looks at a man they've finally seen clearly. "No, Jason," I said evenly. "You ruined us. I just made sure the world saw it." He paced the room like a caged animal, muttering words that didn't matter, excuses, accusations, the usual noise of guilt turning into blame. "Do you know what you've done?" he spat. "You cost me my career." I took a slow sip, savoring the quiet between us. "No, Jason," I replied softly. "You cost yourself that the moment you forgot who was watching." His anger cracked into disbelief, like he couldn't recognize the woman standing in front of him, the one who wasn't trembling anymore. Maybe he missed the version of me who stayed silent. That version was gone. I handed him the envelope sitting on the counter. Crisp, clean, impossible to ignore. Divorce papers. "You can start a new chapter with Melissa," I said, meeting his eyes. "But you'll have to do it without my support, my money, or my name." His jaw clenched, a muscle twitching like he wanted to speak, but couldn't find a word sharp enough. He slammed the door on his way out, the echo ringing through the empty house. For the first time, the sound didn't hurt. It sounded like freedom. When the door slammed, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was sacred. I stood there for a long time, just breathing it in. Every corner of that house had witnessed my patience, my waiting, my heartbreak. Now, it finally belonged to me. I looked at the divorce papers still lying on the counter, the space where his ring used to sit, the life that had unraveled one secret at a time. For once, it didn't feel like loss. It felt like spring cleaning, brutal, necessary, and cleansing in its own way. The next morning, I opened the curtains and let the sunlight flood in. It hit the walls like a quiet applause, lighting up the place in a way it hadn't in years. My phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from friends, from his colleagues, from people pretending to be surprised. I ignored them all. I didn't need validation. Justice doesn't need witnesses. It just needs to be done. I poured myself another cup of coffee and smiled at the simplest truth. I'd finally stopped waiting for someone else to save me. Later, I sat at the kitchen table where everything had once begun. The same table where I'd planned that anniversary dinner. The irony didn't sting anymore. It made me proud. I'd spent so long fearing endings that I never realized how beautiful they could be when you write them yourself. Outside, the world kept turning, indifferent and alive, and I whispered to the quiet, "I'm done being his lesson." A small smile found its way to my lips. Now he's mine. Months later, I found myself back at Trattoria Lucia. Funny how time softens the places that once hurt you. The air still smelled of basil and wine, the piano still hummed softly in the background, but everything felt lighter now. Maybe because I wasn't walking in with hope or heartbreak this time. I was walking in as myself. No secrets, no lies, no tightness in my chest. Just me and a handful of friends who'd seen me through the storm. The hostess recognized me instantly, and for a brief second I saw the flicker of concern in her eyes, until she noticed my smile. "This way, Mrs." she started, then paused. "Just Emma," I corrected gently. "Emma's fine." It felt good to say it, like reclaiming my own name. We were led to a table near the same window where I'd once waited, and I laughed softly at the symmetry of it all. My friends ordered wine, chatter filling the air like music. I leaned back, watching the candles flicker, and thought about how strange healing can be. How it sneaks up on you one quiet evening when you realize you're not pretending anymore. Halfway through dinner, one of my friends nudged me playfully. "Can't believe you came back here after everything," she said. I smiled, tracing the rim of my glass. "Oh, I had to. It's where I finally lost the wrong man and found myself." The table went quiet for a moment, then laughter burst around me like light breaking through clouds. I laughed too, not the polite kind, but the real kind, the kind that starts in your chest and shakes loose what used to hurt. For the first time in a long time, I was free. As the evening went on, I realized how peaceful my life had become. Not perfect, but mine. I'd moved into a smaller apartment near the coast, where mornings smelled like salt and freedom. I'd started painting again, something I hadn't done in years. My laughter had changed too. It no longer needed permission. The version of me who once waited for phone calls and half-truths had been replaced by someone softer, wiser, and beautifully unbothered. I used to measure happiness by who sat across from me. Now I measured it by how full I felt when no one was there. My friends talked about travel plans and family dramas, and I just listened, grateful. Every story felt like proof that life moves forward whether you're ready or not. But if you're brave enough to face it, it gets better than you imagined. The restaurant buzzed around us, the same hum I'd once drowned in tears, now a soundtrack to peace. I caught my reflection in the window, hair a little shorter, eyes a little steadier, and smiled at her like an old friend finally coming home. Just then, the waiter appeared with a dessert I hadn't ordered. A delicate slice of tiramisu dusted with cocoa, placed gently in front of me. He smiled shyly and slid a small folded note beside it. "From the staff," he said quietly. "We thought you might appreciate this." My friends exchanged curious glances while I picked up the note, my fingers trembling not with sadness, but something sweeter, gratitude. I unfolded the note slowly, the paper soft from careful hands. In neat handwriting it read, "To the woman who always deserved better, from all of us at Lucia's." My throat tightened, but for once, not from pain. My friends leaned in, smiling, eyes glistening. I looked around at the restaurant, the flicker of candles, the clinking of glasses, the laughter that felt like music. Everything was the same, and yet nothing was. This wasn't the place where I'd been broken. It was the place where I'd rebuilt. I raised my glass, the light catching the rim just right. "To second chances," I said softly. "To peace, to freedom." My friends echoed the toast, and for a moment, the world felt still, like it was pausing just for me. I took a bite of the dessert, sweet and light, and closed my eyes. Every flavor felt like a reward for surviving something I once thought would destroy me. When I opened them again, I wasn't looking back anymore. I was looking forward. As we laughed and clinked glasses, I heard my own voice in my head, clear, steady, certain. He turned our love into a lie. I turned his lie into my liberation. And just like that, I smiled. Not because I'd won, but because I'd finally stopped losing myself trying to. The past had taken enough. The rest of my life was mine to savor.